Welcome to another episode of Million Dollar Stories, where we get to interview authors from all over the world. I love talking to authors because they have the courage to take their thoughts, their stories, their lessons, put it down in a book, and share it with the many, ultimately changing their legacy and destiny in the process. If you want to write a book out there, I recommend you check out Dream Starters Publishing. We can help you out with wherever you're at in the process. And if you have a book that's already done, you want to generate leads with it for your business to grow maybe some revenue streams, check out bookmarketingcrm.com. And you guys are in for a real treat. If you listen to this podcast, I talk about personal development, psychology, and just the importance of being a great communicator. And that's why we have our next guest on. He wrote a book called Exactly What to Say, the Magic Words for Influence and Impact. And it is an honor to have Phil M. Jones with us. Thanks so much, man.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Well, let's start off with the genesis of this book. We have 5,711 reviews on Amazon. I don't know how you did that, but it's pretty damn special.
Thanks, man.
Um, what made you want to sit down and write this book? And if you can give maybe a little glimpse of where you come from and how you ended up here, that'd be helpful too.
Yeah, sure. I've been building businesses forever. So I started when I was 14 years of age, knocking on the doors of my neighbors, asking them if they wanted their cars washed. And most just asked me how much money I would charge, which meant they were pretty darn interested in what I had to offer. And I did okay with that little car cleaning business as a kid, so much so that by the age of 15, I was making more money than the bulk of my school teachers. I built businesses through my teens, then became the youngest ever sales manager for a department store group in the UK called Debenhams, then went on to be able to lead sales teams in a big furniture retail business in the UK called DFS and turn around broken stores. And so I was leading teams of people significantly older than me in my late teens, early 20s, helping to be able to drive results. And the challenge in that scenario is when I was 25, I still looked like I was 19 and got a lot of age prejudice, a lot of pushback in those environments. Was passionately committed about helping other people to perform and relentlessly curious in what it took to be able to find ways to get other winners to win. So I learned the only way that I could get other people to level up their game was to never give them direct advice. Instead of giving them advice I'd look what other successful people are doing and I'd be like, hey, Mike, I know one of the things you're looking to get better at is blank. I've been watching Jen and Jen crushes in that area, as you well know she does. Would it help if you knew 3 or 4 of the steps or things or items that Jen does that you don't do, that if you were aware of, you could implement action, maybe would make you more successful. So my leadership style became following other people's success, extracting the clues and delivering them to other people because I could never give direct advice because of the age prejudice thing.
Got it.
And this had me passionately obsessed with realizing that often the biggest difference between people that did good and the ones that really crushed it is the ones that crushed it, they knew exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to make it count. They knew the power of the right words at the right time. They weren't just hard work, hustle, product knowledge, understanding. They'd put work into the art of influence and persuasion. They'd build habits that would support them in known conversations. When there were moments that other people would find themselves nervous, anxious, or in a battle, or they'd walk away, they'd have done the work behind the scenes to say, no, I'm ready for that. And I've got multiple ways of being ready for that. So I'm obsessed about language. I have a simple belief that everything that leaves your mouth is either helping or hurting. Nothing is neutral. And if it is neutral, it was probably a waste. And been in the personal development training space since around 2008. So I started a small sales training business back in 2008, run one-day workshops, put 12 people in a room, built a coaching business, built a consulting business, started to speak to put people in those rooms. And I'd meet people following those training sessions years after the fact, and they'd say, Phil, I'm still using your magic words. Because that's what they wanted as a takeaway. They didn't just want the principles and the overarching skills. They wanted to know the precise language that they could go on to be able to use in mission critical scenarios. And I'd deliver speeches inside corporations, and then they'd come back to me weeks and months later and be saying, Phil, the whole team here are still using your magic words. We're calling them philisms and philosophies and sprinkling your magic over everything. I'm like, got it. So there becomes a point where you don't get to decide what your greatest hits are. The marketplace teaches you that if you cast enough out into the world, at some point, somebody will say, we want you to do more of that, please. That's what we like from you. And the word stuff has quite clearly been the piece that's attached to my world. And the book, Exactly What to Say, has now sold approaching 3 million copies, translated into 29 different languages. And what's unique about it is it's a self-pub created book. So to have sold more than 1 million copies of a self-pub book is a little bit of a unicorn. And I'm blessed by the fact that I've done 11 books, and some traditional, some hybrid, some self-pub, and I know the book space remarkably well. A secret I don't get to tell too many people, though, is Exactly What to Say is actually a rewrite of one of my early books. So I wrote a book back in 2012 called Magic Words. That book was created as a bet in a mastermind group with another group of coaches and trainers at the time, that they were saying how hard it was to publish a book. And I'm like, it's not that hard. I mean, if you put your mind to it, you could turn a book around in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks if you needed to. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah. They're like, well, put your money where your mouth is. And I wrote the book Magic Words in response to that bet. And I took a 2-page PDF that I delivered as a takeaway to a training to a group of telecommunications customer service reps just prior. And I took that 2-page PDF and I turned it into a book called Magic Words. I published it on KDP Select. At the time, this was when Amazon were just launching this as a new initiative, and the self-publishing space was remarkably new. And KDP Select at the time had bonus offers that were different to the countdown offers and other things that you can do today. So I put it on a free promotion just for fun. I went back into the KDP account 7 days later, 120,000 downloads on this tiny little book that I turned around quickly. Although it wasn't charged, I was like, oh, I think people must like this.
Yeah.
Ton of 5 stars, couple of 1 stars. People are like, that's not a real book. I'm like, I know it's not a real book. It was like a pamphlet. I mean, I know we're on video right now. I got to show you just because this is funny. Where have I got? Aha. This is said book.
Wow.
Look at it.
Wow. What is it? 28 pages? What is it? Less than that?
23. 2 of those are promo. But this book became a giveaway in my world. We'd customize it for clients at events. We'd use it in PDF form as lead capture on website. We'd do a ton with it. It would be a big part of my brand. But I could never see it as a real book. When I went through my geographic move from the UK to the US circa 2016-17, I thought, in order to be able to move my speaking business from being a international speaking business and more of a North American speaking business, I thought I best do a new book. Do a new book, get on the radar of more bureaus, look to be able to have something to talk about that would get people excited about Phil Jones coming to America. And then I thought, you freaking idiot. Why would you do a new book when what you've got is something from your back catalog that you half-assed, that if you just took the time to be able to reproduce that properly, chances are your successful EP will be a great album. That's what Exactly What to Say is. It's the rewrite of Magic Words, and it's been the consolidation of very much my life's work. It's the giant complex idea around influence and persuasion condensed down into a tiny little book. And people think it's 23 sequences of magic words. It's not. It's 23 principles around influence and persuasion disguised as magic words.
Wow. I'd love for you to dive into that.
Short question. Sorry.
Yeah, I loved it, man. So yeah, when you're on a roll, I just let people go, man. That's fascinating stuff. I like the journey and the fact that it started off as a pamphlet, turned into a real book. Not many people even get past that pamphlet stage. So, whenever I started to really dissect my language, I would say it was right around 2017, 2018. That's when I wanted to boost my authority in the space. And what I realized was the more I wrote, the more clear-minded I became, the more I got myself on camera, the better I got as time went on. So writing plus repetition and speaking were the winning combo for me. And I would say that what I learned more than anything was in order for me to be a better speaker, I actually had to become a better listener first. And so I had to listen to what people were saying and almost take it, what they have given me, and then regurgitate it back in a way that's simple and it's easy to understand. It also boosts my authority by giving a few other nuggets, maybe callbacks of what they said or what happened in the world prior. So, listening, but also repetition. I think those are my ingredients. Where do people, do you agree with that, number one? And then where do people even begin to become a better person of influence or an individual with persuasion?
There are, firstly, yes, there's nothing you say I disagree with. Secondly, to try and bring structure to the second part of the question, which is where do people start if they want to be able to move on this, is there are probably just 4 areas to give further thought to. One is to remember that the worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the moment where you're saying it. Human beings cannot write, perform, and edit at the same time. Yet what the majority of people find themselves doing is stepping into a situation when they're writing what they're about to say as they're saying it whilst thinking about the thing they just said. And there are thousands of known moments, literally thousands of known moments that we're going to step into. So what a pro would do would be get ready for the known moment so they can show up with more presence, they can show up with more posture, they can show up being more in the moment. People are wary of pre-planned or scripts. Yet what I say to people is, have you ever watched a movie and cried? And they're like, yes. I hate to break it to you, it was an actor reading a script, but they weren't reading a script, they were performing a script in character as somebody they needed to be. Now you could be a character too, a version of yourself. And then what else you can give consideration to is, if we're staying on that theme of the movie business, some of the best movie moments have happened when the actor went off script. Didn't wing it, didn't make it up, didn't have the gift of the gab. What the actor chose to do in that moment was to go off script. And to go off script, there had to be a script. To make the conscious decision that says, I can serve this moment better with what I feel in here, what I know from up here, what I understand about the intention of what this moment was supposed to be able to serve. So if you're looking to get better in communication, firstly, define the moments that you need to get ready for. Not learn your lines, learn the moments, and then learn a quantity of lines behind you so you can show up to that moment and be very present, that you don't have to be all up in your head. You just reach into the pantry of stuff you rebaked and watch it come out. Second thing to give consideration to is to note that curiosity is the fuel to great conversation. So if you're looking to be a better listener, do a better job of asking questions. And I know this is kind of ironic, is one of the greatest pieces of advice I could give to people today is to, where possible, give no advice.
It's a great way to put it.
Right? Is even try living a whole day of your life delivering approximately 0 advice. Just talking in terms of questions. And that doesn't mean disguising advice as a question, like, have you thought about it? Have you tried? Have you considered? That's disguising advice as a question. But instead of jumping straight into advice monster mode, slow things down and try and understand the other person's context. So when somebody says, like, oh, I had such a great day today, and you would normally go, yeah, like, me too, and you kill it. When they say, yeah, today was a great day, you're like, what made it so great? And let them tell you. And, you know, how often does that happen? Well, not so often. And share with me some more about, like, what specifically made today so special.
Oh, yeah.
And who else was there? And how might that change what you do differently tomorrow? And I'll just stay there for like 11 questions. And you watch what will happen is the other person will give you more, and you didn't become a better listener, you learned more. And because you learned more, you retained more, therefore you were a better listener. Because you took the time to learn more and they gave you more color, that color made it stickier.
And the fact that they probably like you more.
All
the
of
fact
that.
that they get to talk more, right? The most interesting person in the room is the one who is the most interested, right? Curiosity is a superpower, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Also remember that people listen with their eyes, not their ears. And there's 2 sides of that. They listen actively by looking at you and following eye contact. But they listen with their eyes, i.e., what do they see in their mind's eye, like third eye, when involved in the conversation that they're currently having with you. So they can't see the scenario you're explaining. They cannot see the situation you're presenting. They cannot see what you're trying to explain. They ain't listening. If they can see it, they can understand it, they can listen better. Why? Because we listen in the pictures we create in our mind's eye. That's how we listen.
Wow.
So we've got the worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the moment you're saying it. Curiosity is the fuel to great conversation. Then the third thing to remember is that people do things for their reasons and not yours. That means that you should never advise anybody to do anything unless you can say the words first because of the fact that you said.
Oh, great.
Because of the fact that you said blank, blank, and blank. For those reasons, I'd recommend blank, blank, and blank. Easy, providing you can collect the blanks. You need curiosity to collect the blanks. That's where your recommendation should come from. And then understand that it's the person who's asking the questions that controls the conversation. That's all you need to know. It is that easy and that hard.
Yeah, you said something there. Prepare for the moments. One of the things I struggle with is I go to many events now and I speak on stage, and usually and it sounds crazy, but we're all talking about business development or book creation. But the audience to me is a little bit different from place to place, right? Where maybe they're there for different reasons. And so I kind of have to tailor my speech based off of my visual of what the crowd's going to look like. And I
Absolutely.
struggle with that because sometimes you want to just get into the rhythm, my virtual events or my podcast, and stick with it. And so whenever I tailor a speech from place to place, it might land, but it might not. And that's sort of like a shot in the dark to some degree, unless I become an expert at studying the room. So
Yep.
do you have any advice for people like me when it comes to those moments where different stages are very different based off of the people that are in the seats?
For sure. For context, to help me understand from your point of view, what is your experience of delivering professional presentations? For how long, how many reps, what types of different audiences?
So I would say that my average speech is 30 to 45 minutes long,
Okay.
and you're talking about 50 to 100 people.
Okay, 50 to 100 people. And how many times have you delivered a speech?
Probably have done 35 to 40 speeches.
Okay. And for how many of those were you invited and paid and contracted to be there versus had a commercial outcome?
I would say that of the ones that I usually attend, and I get paid based off of what I can sell from the stage.
Okay.
So maybe I've been flown out a few times, but I would say 80% are ones where I would go and have the ability to speak from the stage without any compensation up front.
So you are there for a business development opportunity with exposure to ideal target market in the audience. That's what makes it commercially viable to you.
Correct.
Okay. So for context in terms of where I'm coming from and for listeners to catch on this too is I've been in the professional speaking business since 2010, delivered over 3,500 paid presentations, spoken 59 countries. I'm one of the youngest living members of the National Speakers Association Hall of Fame. I know the speaking business inside out. And as much as I say I've delivered 3,500 paid professional presentations, I've still not delivered the same presentation twice because every room is different.
Yep.
Every group of people is different. Every moment is different. Now, it might be a certain type of audience. However, if you're the opening speaker, it's a different tone than if you're somewhere in the middle as the content, as if you're wrapping up the show. If you're after lunch, this is a different game than if you're at 10:15 a.m. There's a challenge of are you following a professional or are you following somebody that was just providing an economic update from the financial department that's never delivered a presentation in their life and loaded up 47,000 high impact slides? Like there's a big difference in every given moment that you present. There's also, have these people heard me before? Is this the first time I've ever met them? How familiar are they with my work coming in ahead of time? Like there's 1,000 variables to give consideration to before you show up to a moment. So still today in my process is I will not go to bed until I've seen the room I'm working tomorrow. I want to see the space. I want to understand the layout of the chairs. I want to understand, well, how does AV support or detract? Is there a pillar, a column, a weird light shaft or something in some way that is going to affect or distract the outcome that I'm trying to achieve. Because it is not a speech to an audience. It is a conversation, in your circumstances, with 100 different people that just so happens to be happening at the exact same time. Individual people. It's also not about your 45-minute speech. It's about their 4,500 hours. That's what you're responsible for. So when you change your own stakes and say, well, actually, this isn't me delivering a 1-hour speech. I got 16,000 people in front of me. This is 16,000 hours that I'm responsible for at this given period of time. I best show up for that moment, not my 1 hour, their 16,000 hours. So I do the prep for that. And the prep can be nuanced. The prep can be catching a micro callback. The prep can be an understanding of an acronym inside that organization that allows you to be able to just show the audience that you know them in some way. But what every audience is always thinking, show me that you know me. Show me that you know me. Show me that you know me. So your prep work is twofold. Show them that you know them, and then also understand that the environment that you are working in, it can hinder you or help. So make it help. Use the room as a prop, use your space on the agenda as a prop, and control every controllable that you possibly can. This means how you get introduced to the stage, how you use the stage as a prop, what you bring into this environment to be able to support your presentation with slides, no slides, videos, props, how you interact with Q&A, where do you aim it? Don't take your interactive Q&A moment and land it on the dude that flew in from Dubai that doesn't speak English, that was there as a guest of the organization. And you learn this through reps, back to your point earlier. It's like, you've got to do stuff enough time to learn. And in a speaking environment, you want to be prepared for every version of what could go wrong. Same in any other conversation. So the reason I know what to do when somebody has a cardiac episode in your audience is because it's happened. The reason I know what to do when I prepare an hour and somebody says, can you run a tight 25 4 minutes before you're supposed to go on? I'm good with that. When the AV goes out, I'm good with that. When there's a heckler in the room, yeah, no bother. Because you have to prepare for all the potential eventualities, and that's where true confidence comes from. I think this is the game that more of us can play if you're prepared to say, not did I do okay, but what would a pro do? And when you play at pro level, a standard that you set for yourself that doesn't exist in your community, the stakes just got a heck of a lot higher. And you realize you ain't ever going to get there, which is fun.
When you speak on stage, you said 3,500 presentations. That's amazing. Are you flowing in accordance with a roller coaster visual? Bring them up, bring them down, end on a high note. Do you have any type of systematic approach? And are there certain magic words that you use? I've realized that words like imagine are so powerful that gets people to enter a state of mind that gets them where I want them. So magic words and flow, anything you can recommend to me or my audience?
If you are writing a presentation, and I was considering how to structure it, and I'm trying to do this simply in the short time that we have together today, I'd consider a few things in order. Firstly, where do I want to land the plane? So I'm going to start with the end in mind. How do I want this to end? I'm then going to look at saying, how do I want this to start? And then I'm going to look at what's the most important ingredient that lives somewhere in the middle. And for you, when you're looking to sell from the stage, the most important ingredient in the middle is probably the offer. Like, leaving the offer to the end is one of the stupidest things you can do. Is putting it 70, 80% of the way into the presentation, 2/3 of the way into the presentation, and still finishing with a high note means you get the first win. You also get all the maybes have a chance to be able to fall in love with your message again, already knowing the offer, so that you are reinforcing the potential of what they might look to be able to move on with. So I'm starting with the end and the end of the presentation, not my pitch. Like, where do I want them to go home? How do I want them to feel at the end of all of this? So I'm building the pieces of bread. Then I'm saying, what's my primary sandwich filler? Once I've got those things in place, I run a simple flow. Tell a story, make a point, tell a story. Tell a story, make a point, tell a story. Tell a story, make a point, tell a story. And what generally tends to happen is if you butt your stories and you butt your points, you follow a melody.
Mm-hmm.
Most people do is they tell a story, they make a point, they tell a story, they make a point. They create a very predictable cadence to the audience, which makes them very comfortable, which makes them disconnect because this just feels nice. It's just classical music. This is predictable. So you mess with people on purpose. But you tell a story, you make a point, you tell a story, you make a point, you bore people, you tell a story, you make a point, tell a story, right? Make a point, tell a story. Then it has more of a natural environment. What you then do is you realize you could have a 3-minute story, a 3-second story, or a 13-minute story. They could all support the same point. You could make that point in 5 seconds. You could make that point in 90 seconds. You could make that point in 5 minutes. And what you're now doing is you're building a pantry so that you have utility to deliver in any given environment by pulling together a body of ingredients, but you're still following the same flow. So you start with the opening, jump to the close, think about the most important thing. For you, that's your offer. For me, sometimes like that's the big idea that I want them to capture in that given moment that shows that I know those people. It solves the number one problem they're trying to be able to deal with. If you take just one thing from our time together today, it's this. And then everything else is packaging. Same as it would be in a sandwich. If this was a chicken sandwich, you don't have to tell them that there's lettuce there and tomato and mayo and like it's a chicken sandwich on rye. So I figure out it's rye, I figure out it's chicken, then we play with the rest of it. It's all dressing, all to support the main point, but it's tell a story, make a point, tell a story, but do it all in random lengths.
Now, when it comes to influence in general, and I've read Robert Cialdini's book, it talks about social proof and maybe dropping clues. I always think that whether it's on a sales call or on stage or on a podcast, you really have to be precise with sometimes showing social proof, whether I worked with this person, I did X, Y, and Z. You need to do that and cleverly do it, that it's not like you're name dropping. So is that part of influence, showing social proof in a subtle way that does impress, that also catches their ear and eyes?
There are 3 questions that almost every decision maker is asking when they're making the decision of whether I'm looking to choose you or not. And the decision that they're often, the 3 questions they're often looking to ask themselves is, have you done this before? Have you done it recently? And have you done it for someone like me? So if you can answer those 3 questions in what you're sharing with a resounding yes, then you're in good shape. Social proof is a part of that. If you're in the business of selling coaching services and you want to say that I've done this before, I've done it recently, and I've done it for someone like you, in your early conversations, you say you're coaching graphic designers. In your early conversations, you're saying, some of the most interesting things I find about the most influential graphic designers and the ones that get paid the big fees is that I've learned a repeating habit in them, or a repeating mistake that they make is, so something early on in the conversation, I'm showing that I know what's happening with the highest earning graphic designers. But I want to say that I've done something recently. So later in conversation, before we make the pitch, I'll tell a story. When somebody says, like, how do you go about doing blank? I'll say, well, there was this one time just 3 weeks ago where I was working with a guy called Colin, and Colin runs a design business in ABC location, and what he was struggling with was blank, and what we helped him see was blank, and he went on to be able to go and do blank, blank, and blank, and the results are now blank, blank, and blank. So it's like, oh, there's some recent proof too. But I guess you're probably wondering, like, how does this work for people like you? Like, we've been in this business a long time, and I've helped everybody from, the local startup graphic designer in his bedroom that is trying to be paid more for the logos he's creating on Canva, and right through to support some of the largest graphic design agency businesses on the planet. And to date, we've helped over 3,000 graphic designers to be able to be rewarded at the right price point. So it doesn't matter whether you're a brand new designer trying to find your first clients to pay your professional fees, or whether you're working at one of the top agencies here in New York City, like insert. You can trust the fact that we've got experience of working and helping people just like you.
Wow.
But a mistake that people often make when they're name dropping for social proof is they only drop the big names. So
Too
the issue
distant
that
then.
can
And that's
happen,
too distant then.
right, is you got a great show, you got a great podcast, and somebody's like, hey, like we're talking to you about how you can be able to make things better. And, you know, I worked on the Joe Rogan show, and I worked on this show, and I worked on that show. And you're like, that's great. But I want to know the journey. I want to know the from and to, right? I want to know that I helped somebody that started a show with nothing and got them to a point of here. I want to know that I'm still helping people that are behind me in the race and ahead of me on the race in terms of credibility. So your from and to statements become the useful things for you to collect in social proof. So even take, for example, the book publishing work that you're involved in. You know, whether you've got an established book that's already sold 25, 30, 40,000 copies and has helped achieve you stages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or you've got an idea, some notes in a journal, some thoughts and 3 people that have told you if you write a book that I'll buy it. Whether you're anywhere in that journey, the systems and processes that we have and that we teach and that we provide for you are almost certainly going to amplify you to the next level. And that doesn't mean if you've got an idea that you're going to be jumping straight to 100,000 units. But it does mean that if you follow our proven system, like the 1,542 people that have done in the last 12 months, then what you're going to get is more predictable income, more predictable leads, and you're going to leverage the success that you've already created.
Love it. Precision with your words, absolutely important. And obviously you are, I think, a great storyteller. That's part of the game, right? It's not just about being a great salesperson or communicating and articulating your solutions very well. You have to hold their attention. And I talk a lot about Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey within this podcast. So when it comes to that, the art of storytelling, is there anything you'd be able to share with our audience of, almost as if in your speech, you need to have the person envision themselves in your shoes and therefore thus becoming the hero of their own journey, or anything you could share when it comes to just storytelling in general?
You talked about sequence of words earlier, the words imagine. When it comes down to decision making in the human brain, there are a few pieces of basic psychology that we need to understand. The first of which is that every decision that every human being has ever made has been made at least twice. What I mean by that is we first make decisions hypothetically in our mind's eye. We have to see ourselves doing something before we choose to do it. And therefore, if somebody can't see themselves taking an action, the likelihood of them choosing to take that action is slim to none. The second thing to give consideration to when it comes to decision making is when we're asked to make a decision, we reach into a key area of reference. That key area of reference is our memory. Memory is like the world's biggest Instagram account. There are a gazillion photographs that live up here in our mind. And when asked to make a decision, we reach into these photograph bank looking for images that could potentially inform the decision we're being asked to make. The slightly awkward question to ask of you is this, is how many of your memories actually happen to you? It's an awkward question because the answer is not all of them. Your memories became memories from one of 2 reasons. It was either an experience that you did live through, or it was an experience that was shared with you, typically in the form of a story. And when that story was shared with you, you pulled out your artist brush, you painted an image, you stuck it up here. You've now re-seen that image so many times that sometimes you have to second guess, like, did that actually happen? Or have I just re-seen it so many times that I believe that it happened? There's another thing to just take from base psychology is that, there's a period of time in our life that we learn quicker than any other point in time in our life. And scientists can't agree on the exact timeline, but they all agree it's when we are children. As children, we learn quickest through the experiences that we live through and the experiences that are shared with us, typically in the form of a story. Because a story will always sell, whereas a fact will only tell. Let's pull all this together for a second. In order for us to make a decision, we first need to see ourselves doing something. If we cannot see ourselves doing something, the likelihood of us choosing to do it is slim to none. To inform that decision, validate the decision with logic, we reach into our memory. Our memory is the world's biggest Instagram account full of images. When we look into those images, we ask ourselves, how did they get there? It was either an experience we lived through or a story that was shared with us. We learned quickest when we were kids because a story will always sell, whereas a fact will only tell, and stories amplify experience. How did a child know a story was coming? What were the magic words?
Once upon a time.
You say the words once upon a time to a kid, they open up Instagram accounts, say, gimme, gimme, gimme the pictures, this is going to be good. You cannot use the words once upon a time with an adult, a colleague, a grown-up, a prospect in the same way. You can, though, use the adult equivalent that are the words just imagine. They're the exact same words. So what are we just teaching is I just shared a story about the power of story by demonstrating through the form of story that stories help us see things from different points of view. But the science in that is really quite profound, is if you can help somebody see themselves in an alternate reality, they will then accept that that reality is true. If you can help them collect future-facing memories that haven't yet happened in the form of the stories you share, they find confidence in a reality that they've already created. And if you can help people find confidence that your solution will help them get either closer to that or run from it, depending upon what it is that motivates them, then you can trigger action. It is that easy and it's that hard. But our ability to tell stories is hyperlinked to our ability to influence other people. But it isn't our ability to tell stories. It's our ability to tell the right stories well. Because otherwise you will distract away from the goal and become less influential. We all have somebody in our life that is a remarkable storyteller and a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it isn't the ability to tell stories, it's the ability to tell the right story at the right time to reinforce the visuals of the outcome you're trying to create. There's complexity in that, but I'm pretty sure you're getting it.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you say that. There are many people that I know who are great storytellers, but they don't use it the right way for their career, for their own development. They're just fun to be around around a fire. And
Right.
it's funny you say that because a few people pop to mind. But then there are the other ones, the great storytellers like the Dr. Jordan Petersons of the world, who have
Yeah,
figured out a way to really not only motivate and inspire, but to simplify very, very complex things and bring it down to ground level.
that's right.
So excellent. You just said something, guys, and this is what I just took from it. There are times I get on stage or on a sales call, and I give them the vision of the end product, but I am not giving them the vision of them step by step going through it. And I think I'm losing people that way. So
Right.
giving them the vision of them taking the journey and what the journey is going to look like is just as important as them entering the promised land. Am I right?
100%. 100%. Because if I cannot see how the sausage is made, I don't believe I'm going to enjoy its taste.
And I think we all fall into that trap to some degree. Oh, it's so good, man. Um, Outside of your own book is a question I always ask people that comes on this show. And is there a book that stands out in your life that made you fall in love with persuasion or entrepreneurship or personal development in general?
Yeah, there's a number. And avid reader, like I'm sure many of the people that you bring on the show, if I'm to reach to a few that I think that might be the most helpful, I'm going to share the one that I most recommend today and probably the book that's been the most influential on my life as a whole. So the one that's been the most influential on my life as a whole was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like I studied Carnegie's work from an early age. I was involved with a training company that brought Carnegie's work to the UK. And my work is heavily influenced by the work of Dale Carnegie. And that was because I studied the book. I didn't read the book from a very early age. And so many of those principles live so true today. And then the most recommended book that I share with people today when they're struggling with sales, leadership, or coaching challenges is I invite them to read a book by a friend of mine called Michael Bungay Stanier. And the book is called The Coaching Habit. And The Coaching Habit is simply 7 prefaces to questions to allow you to be more coach-like in everything that you do. So if we reference back to a point we made earlier today that curiosity is a superpower, the coaching habit gives you tools to help you be strategically more curious in many of the moments that matter. And it's a simple read, similar to exactly what to say. It's highly actionable, highly practical, and I think gives you useful tools that from the moment you put the book down, you're like, I'm better. So it's The Coaching Habit, Michael Bungastania, and How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Yeah, excellent recommendation there. I got to check out the other one. But I'm thrilled to see that you are the narrator of your audiobook. I want to check it out. I'm going to download that today, put it on when I run. So, guys, I recommend you check out Phil M. Jones' book, Exactly What to Say, The Magic Words for Influence and Impact. And Phil, is there a website or a social media channel that you recommend people check out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you want to dig in further to our work, philmjones.com, exactlywhattosay.com are two sites. But if you just want to continue the conversation and be like, it was fun to hang with you and Mike, come find me on Instagram. I manage my own Instagram account. It's nice to connect with people that have been on the show. And I'm at PhilMJonesUK. Stop by, say hi. Let me know that you were part of this conversation. Love to be able to pick up where we've left off and see how there might be some ways that we can help each other.
You said that you left UK and went to the United States. Are you still in the United States?
Yeah, I'm going to live here in New York City.
Oh, okay. I'm in Pittsburgh. All right, good deal, man. So I like the background. This guy does it right. Look at him, guys. When he has a book, he makes it very well known for anybody who is able to see him on camera. Look at, having the books on full display. Another aspect of influence, right? The moment you write a book, people look at you with authority and they say, hey, I got to get that person on my podcast or on my stage. And the more you write, the clearer things become. It's amazing how that happens. So, man, Phil M. Jones, thanks so much for being here, man. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure, pleasure.
Remember, guys, $1 million book will lead to $1 million